All right, so now we're going to have to build a little bit of framework as far as what the term Messiah, anti-Messiah, king, prince, and witnesses, what all of those concepts mean, what their rules are in the spiritual sense. And we're going to use some biblical patterns to sort of formulate so that when we look at the current events, we can actually understand what's happening. So 1 Kings chapter 1 is when Adonijah decides he is going to be the next king. And this is after a long series of events where after David raped Bathsheba and ended up redirecting his heirship from his firstborn son and that line to then he owed that kingship to Bathsheba's offspring. And this is why you have all of the infighting with Amnon, with Absalom, and now finally with Adonijah. So Adonijah is the next in line if you don't factor in the Solomon prophecy and the reason why. Same thing where when Judah slept with Tamar, he gave her his cord, his staff, and his seal. All symbolically, he passed on his lineage to Tamar, and God used that to keep the kingship in Judah's family. The same thing is going on here where we're having David's sons fight for the kingship of Israel. And Adonijah decides to use the Abiathar the priest and Joab. So we're talking about he uses the religion of the nation and he uses the military of the nation to confirm that he is going to be their next king. And as part of this transfer and taking of kingship, and this, if you read earlier in the chapter, David's about to die. He's old, and Adonijah thinks he can get away with this, pulling this move. He sacrifices sheep and oxen and fattened calf, and I'll get into the name meanings in another video, but it's important here to show you why the two witnesses of Revelation are important. So after David finds out about the plan with Adonijah, Nathan comes in, gets Bathsheba involved, and they tell David what's going on with Adonijah, how he's throwing a feast, that he has been crowned king of Israel as David's successor. And David's command, which when God gives a king rulership over the land, their edict and their word stands. So David's order here sets a precedence. Just like when a judge, a Supreme Court justice, rules in a case, they set a precedence in most countries, and in America, however that is set up. I know everyone doesn't have a Supreme Court, but whenever a precedent is set in a nation, whether it be by a king or a priesthood or a Supreme Court justice, same thing is in line here. So David used a priest and a prophet to counter the false anointing of Adonijah, and he sent Zadok the priest, which means judge, and Natan the prophet, which means gives. So he judged and he gave the kingship to Solomon, Shlomo, the Prince of Peace. In this context, now when you see these peacock feathers behind Charles here in this 2020 speech, now remember, this is the first time, as far as I'm aware, that this backdrop has ever been used. There are 3 peacock feathers, which is Solomon's sigil, with a crown, which if you saw in my earlier video, has the SDG halo of the 17 goals of the Sustainable Development New World Green Takeover. Now, he's claiming in this speech in 2020, he is claiming to be the prince to rule over the people of Israel in the exact same sense, in a copy and paste of Adonijah and the claiming of the kingship. And watch, this is even cooler. So Adonijah, when he took the throne, he used two witnesses as well, but his witnesses, instead of being a priest and a prophet, his witnesses were Joab and Abiathar. So he used, Abiathar was the religious leader, so it's part of the priesthood. So he used the official priesthood of the nation, as well as the government sponsored military of the nation. In the same sense, so Pope Francis sent King Charles a staff. A staff is always biblically significant and prophetically poignant of a physical authority, a right to rule the physical sphere. Now, we also got another gift for King Charles's coronation, given by Netanyahu, which is actually coming from the same root as Nathan the prophet, Natan, and it's actually an inversion of Jonathan. We'll get to that in another video. But the Mount of Olives was where the olive oil for King Charles's coronation came from. And if you notice, the blend is not the proper blend for the holy anointing of Israel, but they're adding to the biblical blend of the holy anointing oil for the kings of Israel. And they are claiming this anointing of Adonijah. If you also pay attention here, they consecrated the oil in Jerusalem for the coronation, and they're calling it sacred for the ritual coronation. And in this article, they go into detail about the ancient background of the anointing oil and the kings of Israel all the way to the past, and they make very subtle references to it, where anybody that knows their language knows what they're talking about. So this is why I believe there are two witnesses specifically, because in the same sense where David sent Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet to anoint Solomon at the spring of Gihon. That's a very important feature. The place of the anointing, the Gihon spring. Gihon means breaking forth, bursting forth. We'll get into that in another video as well. But the two witnesses required, a priest and a prophet, to counter the false anointing of Adonijah and show the nation of Israel that was not the chosen heir of King David. King Charles has claimed the title, and he's claimed the symbolism of Solomon, the heir of David. And he is now confirming a 7-year covenant through the sacrifice of this red heifer as heir and king over Israel and the rest of the world. And it will be two witnesses that anoint Jesus, Yeshua, as the true king. Because if you look at the scriptural accounts, in no place was Jesus actually anointed as the king of Israel. He took the priesthood. John the Baptist anointed him as the priest under the Levitical order. And as we know, he's also under the order of Melchizedek. But he claimed that priesthood. He claimed the robe when the high priest Caiaphas tore his robes right before Jesus' crucifixion. He was symbolically passing his priesthood over, and this is shown by the fact that Jesus' robes, while taken and cast lots for, they were never torn, because a high priest's robes cannot be torn. Caiaphas removed himself from office in that place, and Yeshua, having been anointed by John the Baptist, then took the next position as high priest over Israel. When he returns, he will be claiming his kingship from this false priest, this false king, who wants to be the priest. And in the same sense, we're going to have a repeat of the David and Saul story, where Saul is the previously anointed king, who is going to try to wipe out the inheritance of those who are still serving under the king Yeshua, who is not in submission to this one world government. And that's what we're seeing playing out right before our very eyes. Prophecy is unfolding in the most unbelievable way. It's not even funny, but it is so exciting to see. And the plan for redemption is starting to unravel as those of you look for other alternatives than running into the armed